AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
Welcome to the AI in Action podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kelly, Chief Customer Officer at Alldus International. Today's guest is Oliver Mickler. Oliver is the MD and co-founder of Tillhub. Oliver, very welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be on your show.
Oliver, tell me a little bit about you and your background, and then tell us how Tillhub came about and what is it that you do for people that don't know.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Oliver. I'm one of the founders of Tillhub. I founded the company together with two good old friends of mine in 2016. And before that, I already worked a lot in the startup scene, let's say, here in Berlin. Also active as an angel investor. I built up a mobility startup, which was called My Driver, which eventually was integrated into the Sixt Corporation and is now called Sixt Ride. And then in 2016, I took this adventure on with Tim and Frank. And what does Tillhub do? So Tillhub is an iPad-based point of sale system for retailers and service businesses. And we made much more of that. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this later.
I think it's good to maybe give a little bit of that overview, but also maybe the overview about what it's like in Germany for people that don't necessarily know too much about the environment there.
That's actually a very good point, Mark. So I think that Germany, also compared to other markets, is always lagging behind a little bit when it comes to digital solutions, cardless payments, and so on. And what Tillhub basically does is that we help SMEs to participate at digital solutions because we make it very accessible and easy and affordable for them. And you have to imagine that a lot of our customers, before they work with our solution, they did things with pencil and paper or Excel spreadsheets. And our mission is basically to help these retailers get rid of pencil and paper and Excel spreadsheets and have all their processes in place in a digital way using digital tools. And this is why when we say point of sales, what we actually offer goes way beyond the checkout desk in the store. So our system comes with customer relationship management. You can use it for certain marketing activities. You have employee management, you have time tracking, you have online shop integrations. We built a voucher system so you can do something for the loyalty of your customers. And of course, a lot of analytics, so they get real-time analytics and know what products are selling well and which not. And all of this should help them to manage their stores better and be more successful at what they're doing.
So tell us a little bit about your journey to how you kind of grew out the project, finding the problem that you were working through. So we were kind of setting the scene about how you could apply machine learning to a customer's experience where let's say they're running a bakery, for example, and the supply and demand, and it's put your finger in the air, you don't quite know which way the wind's going to go, particularly in the pandemic, it becomes even more challenging.
Yeah, definitely. So Mark, one question for you. Do you like cinnamon buns?
I do, and I quite like anything with sugar. It seems to be a bit of an issue for me in terms of this. I think there might be like a Chocoholic Anonymous in America. I don't think they have them in Ireland, but I definitely would be on this program if there was. It seems to be my kryptonite.
Yeah, so I have this favorite place. Like, if we see each other next time in Berlin, I would love to show you. It's my favorite bakery, and they're just down the street. And they have these amazing cinnamon buns. And I have the following problem. Sometimes I get there and they have none. And sometimes I get there and they have way too many. So wouldn't it be amazing if the baker knew exactly how much cinnamon buns he or she should produce? And this is some thing that we dug into, and worked on a very, very cool sales prediction feature for our product. And what we are doing there is basically democratizing the access to technology that usually only bigger firms like Fortune 500 firms have. They have a lot of money, they have budget, they have data science or data scientists or consulting firms, and they do exactly this. They dig into the massive amount of data that companies like, for example, Zara or Walmart or Tesco have, and then derive what should we actually order for the next week. Our bakery doesn't have this. And so what do these big firms do, or the data scientists consulting these big firms do? They configure data pipelines, they look for machine learning models that are working well on their problems. Basically, the process of configuring a data pipeline by preparing the data, selecting the features, validating the models. And this is something that our bakery cannot do, but this changed because technology progresses. And so in order to make this an approach that became a feature in our product, we investigated into meta automation of data pipelines, which can be done through a genetic model that is called TPOT. Have you heard about TPOT?
I haven't. Tell me more.
Yeah, so TPOT is actually very exciting. Also, it's open source. You should check it out. There's a very active community on GitHub, and I encourage everybody who's interested in machine learning to check it out. So what does TPOT do? TPOT automizes machine learning in the sense that it lets data pipelines compete in an evolutionary fashion to find out what the best configuration of your data pipeline is for a given train sample and test sample. So in our case, for predicting sales, looking at the past sales data. And this includes the entire process, like selecting the features, selecting the models, optimizing the parameters for these models. So instead of actual people who cost a lot of money, we have TPOT finding out what machine learning model is the best to approximate our goal. And this is why we call it a meta model or meta automation. And so let me explain a little bit in a nutshell how TPOT performs its magic. Yeah. So the first population is random. Let's say 100 data pipelines. That's the default. And then within a blink of an eye, TPOT passes on the best performing data pipelines onto the next generation. And then again, test them all over with regard to your data, and then pass them on to the next generation. And this process moves on and finishes when it found the configuration that has the smallest divergence from your goals, so our sales data, and or the max number of generations is reached that you configured beforehand. Yeah. And if it wasn't for this evolutionary model, a computer program could try out millions or billions of combinations of these variables and never stop. And this is why it's so cool, because through this genetic algorithm, identifying the optimal variables becomes a finite issue.
I think it saves a lot of time and a lot of money, and it sounds like it sounds like a good GitHub community working together. So it's something I'm going to definitely look into better.
Yeah. So you see that I'm very enthusiastic about this. So why is this so revolutionary? There are a couple of aspects. The process works extremely well if you're facing data sets with very, very different kinds and origins. So look at Tillhub. Yeah, you have very different types of customers. There are hairdressers, there are fashion stores. We talked about the bakeries, and of course, they're all subject to very, very different, let's say, impact factors that are in the end variables within our optimization problem. And of course, it's not one solution fits all. Like if you select one ML model, let's say a certain decision tree model, and apply it to the hairdressers, you could not necessarily transfer this to the bakeries. But because we are on a meta level here, and TPOT selects all different problems for all different models for different data sets and different external conditions, we skip this problem of trying to fit one machine learning model to all kinds of problems. And this goes also for not only different businesses, but also the same kind of businesses, because also, let's say the same bakery or same fashion store can, let's say, in other words, bakeries or fashion stores can be very different from another. Let's say you have a bakery in a business district and a bakery in a residential area. Of course, they behave totally differently when it comes to, for example, traffic and what type of, I don't know, what day of the week it is and so on.
So when you look at the different types of customers you have, and you're trying to help fast track their success while kind of learning from everyone else's learning and standing on the shoulders of giants, you think about the vast majority of data science projects, they don't make it into production and they fail for a variety of different reasons. What are you noticing in the trends in this area?
Yeah, I mean, we can tell from our own experience. There are different aspects to that. You have the planning aspect, you have the data itself, you have priorities in the company. Maybe I can walk you through our own pains a little bit. So planning a data science project means you have a high degree of insecurity. It's totally different than planning, for example, just a software development project, which is much more predictable in its outcome. One reason for that is that in data science, complexity sort of adds up. You have the implementation complexity, but also you have the analytical complexity, and they basically mutually reinforce each other. So they are subject to a power law. It becomes more and more complex because you cannot really tell if it will work. And I maybe won't even have sufficient patterns in my data. I cannot tell this in advance. So that's the planning side of things. Then you have the data side of things. I mean, I come from the startup environment. Data is often stored inconsistently over time. We refactor our data model in the different formats and systems and inconsistent data structures. So this is definitely a barrier to these sort of things. And then the data distribution may change over time. At one point of time, let's say, like our business is very strong with the bakeries, and then a year later with hairdressers, and then a year later our customer base is dominated by fashion stores. So these are things that might like kill your previous assumptions, because also a project like this takes time. You might work on this for a year or so until it becomes a feature you can release. And then also very essential are priorities in a company. I mean, as a startup, we are always facing scarce resources and have to prioritize strictly. And if it doesn't make money, we cannot pursue it. So software development is often blocked with projects that just seem to pay more money, given also all the insecurity and uncertainty that comes along with data science projects. But if it works, then it can really be a competitive advantage, because what you do there is extremely hard to copy. So I think also overall it takes a lot of courage to take on an endeavor like this.
It definitely does, and it takes a lot of courage to actually go on that, because the vast majority of projects in technology fail, and you need to be pretty tough to ride it out, because the culture can be really impacted if you're getting used to not succeeding, or if you're working on a problem really well, but the problem you're working on doesn't actually make much impact within the company that you're doing. So you're investing a lot of different time. And it's great to hear about Tillhub adding value to people who aren't on a digital transformation journey or don't necessarily know the benefits of going on that digital transformation journey. And with COVID, we've seen that probably 50% of companies now are on a transformation journey within North America. Now in Europe, that figure is obviously would be increasing. I'm not quite sure what the key stats are for Germany at this point of time. Where do you see the future of payments going, and can you see a kind of a trend happening at this moment of time?
There's one thing, but I don't think it's that exciting to talk about it, that of course, like everybody's paying contactless now, but I think that's old news. But I would also make some guesses about what's going to come, and you can challenge it. from first a consumer's point of view and also us as a provider in that industry. So what I see from consumers' perspective is that payment itself becomes more frictionless. Like you pay everywhere in whatever way and whenever, which means you maybe pay later. And I think that what we learned a decade ago when Uber entered the market, that you just go and leave and don't have actually the feeling of having conducted a transaction and handed somebody some means of payment, will be transferred to all the experiences. So whether it's online or in the retail world. And what I also think is a very interesting aspect is that we pay ever even smaller amounts by installments. So I heard from a provider in this industry that even amounts like 40 euros will be paid by installments, and they see it as totally normal already in their transactions. So this is the pay later aspect I was talking about. Then there's another aspect. I think it's going to be dominated by some platforms. If you ask me today, I do everything with Apple Pay, yeah, online or offline. But as usual, it's all momentarily. And let's listen to this in 10 years of time and laugh about how Oliver and Mark thought Apple Pay was the thing back in 21. Let's see what the future brings. And then another point is that maybe or hopefully crypto tokens or platform-specific tokens will play a much bigger role in the future. And then there's the provider view. So we, as a provider in this industry, maybe one disclaimer here. I don't want to talk about data too much at this point because I think it's not the biggest news. Online and offline commerce are growing together. We all know that you want to track your customer journey from the online to the offline world and back and target your customers better and better. I think we are all very aware of that. But the very interesting thing comes now, like the challenge is for us providers. How do we actually make this very valuable and also subtle enough to make the consumers happy in the long term and not freak them out about how transparent they actually are to us? And then looking at our customers, which are not the consumers, but the merchants in between, our role as providers is to allow these merchants to participate at this digitalization process and make it very easy for them then to, let's say, to launch new payment methods, whether it's fiat or crypto, mitigate credit risks, manage their cash cycles. So give them access to all these tools, and it should be easy and frictionless. And this comprises onboarding, the KYC process. They need transparency on fees. They want affordable fees. And I'm talking about this or know a little bit about this because Tillhub became part of a bigger payment group in the last year, which is called Unser. And the aim of us and Unser as the company is to build a European payment giant. And these items I were just talking about are really top of our agenda in building great services for our customers.
Oliver, I think you did get a really, really interesting points, because what I've been noticing more and more is that companies, when you're buying stuff on their website, they are trying to make it easier to buy through installments, to make it more straightforward rather than the one lump fee, and make it easier for people. And unfortunately, with the pandemic, some people will be negatively affected that they will not be in a position to purchase like they purchased before until they maybe get back on their feet as well. So we need to be more kind of conscious of that, and then making it very, very easy, because we all want that Netflix type experience now where it just works all the time. It's on demand. You've got recommendation engines that provide just about the right content for you because they've kind of analyzed your behavior, and it's very, very easy to use. So it's a very, very fascinating space, and it's moving so quickly. Some of the de facto leaders that you thought were de facto leaders, now their reign is over and everything is being questioned, and the different players coming into the market are asking a lot of questions of how we did things in the past, and even using like Revolut compared to the bank that I use day to day. I'd be pulling my hair out waiting for a transaction to approve or be processed compared to what Revolut can do too. You're listening to the AI in Action podcast. My name is Mark Kelly, Chief Customer Officer at Alldus International, and today I've been speaking to Oliver Mickler. Oliver is the co-founder and MD of Tillhub. Oliver, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Mark. See you for Cinnamon Bun in Berlin.
For this podcast or any other podcast, please feel free to go to www.alldus.com/podcast and check out a variety of different podcasts within AI in Action and also AI Mentors. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple and rate and review us. Love to get your feedback on the podcast series. And until next week, for more AI in Action, I'm your host, Mark Kelly. Thank you for your time.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week, we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.